Hello, grade 9s. Today I will be guiding you through this presentation on apartheid, part 1. Enjoy. You may remember that after World War I, President Wilson had come up with the idea of a League of Nations. It was one of his 14 points. And the idea of the League of Nations was to avoid another war. The League of Nations obviously failed as we had World War II. It fell for many reasons. For example, the fact that the USA never joined the League of Nations, which is quite ironic, as President Wilson, the President of the United States, was the one who came up with the idea of the League of Nations. But later on, the United States didn't join. Other countries like Germany was only allowed to join later. Germany and Italy left the League of Nations in the 1930s. So one of the reasons being that most of the powerful countries were not members of the League of Nations at the time. Also, the League of Nations didn't have an army, so it was very difficult to enforce its will on the world. They had economic sanctions, but many of the countries like Britain and France did not want to impose economic sanctions because it wasn't convenient for them. And so eventually the League of Nations was powerless. So after World War II, it became even more evident that the world needed an organization of all nations to keep world peace and to deal with the world problems. And so the United Nations was created. The United Nations is made up of 193 countries. They are known as the member states. The main aims of the United Nations are to secure international peace, to fight poverty, and to protect human rights. The UN has created a comprehensive system of international law to protect human rights, with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as its cornerstone. In 1948, the United Nations created the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It basically stated that human beings have inalienable rights, rights that cannot be taken away from them just for being members of the human race. They have these rights, and these rights must be protected everywhere in the world. The first article says that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and in rights. This photo is a very famous photo. Is Eleanor Roosevelt. She was President Roosevelt's wife, and she chaired the committee that drafted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. Before the Declaration of Human Rights, many nations had endorsed and practiced racism and had gone as far as to try to justify racism in a scientific way. It wasn't real science. It was fake science that they used in order to try to prove to the world that racism was valid. One of the theories that they used was social Darwinism. Basically, social Darwinism takes Darwin's theory of evolution and the idea of the survival of the fittest, and it says that the survival of the fittest is a basic law of nature, and so that means that superior races should aim to dominate inferior races. I always find it very unfair that they use Charles Darwin's name for such a despicable theory when Charles Darwin had nothing to do with social Darwinism.